Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This video is brought to you by First Detachment Nutrition. Battle tested, expert formulated. Use discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. Alright folks, Big Paul here today, and I'm going to react to an interview with Dorian Yates where he talked about his pre-contest stack cycle, what drugs he took on pre-contest when he was competitive in the IFBB. I'm going to show you the video, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it as he goes through what he's taking. You know how it is with a lot of these old pros. They talk cryptically about their cycles. They're not entirely forthcoming. I think Dorian has been more transparent lately, but we'll go into it. I'll give you my thoughts, fill in some of the blanks, and we'll dig into all that in just 1 second.
And as far as steroids go, I was a big believer in, when you're doing contest prep, on using non-aromatizing compounds.
So, first thing here. In the 90s, I don't believe there were really any aromatase inhibitors available. Nothing commercially anyway. I think Arimidex was put on the market somewhere around 2000, if I recall correctly. Guys back then were just using tamoxifen, so the only way they could control estrogen was to pull down testosterone to almost nothing and load up on the DHT derivatives, which we now know, I don't know that they did then, have an effect on lowering estrogen as well. So likely I would guess that he was probably using something like Prima Bolan, maybe Masteron. I didn't really hear of guys using Masteron back then. Possibly, but my guess is that it's probably going to be Prima Bolan. I recall hearing him say before that he ran Prima Bolan. And we know that Prima Bolan does act as an aromatase inhibitor of sorts, one of the metabolites anyway. So let's see what he says here.
So I'd have a little bit of testosterone in there, like propionate, because it's quick acting, it doesn't aromatize as much as the longer acting ones. But just
one thought here. So I don't know that I buy into the propionate doesn't aromatase as fast as the others. I think probably what that is a result of is the more frequent injection that you would have to take with propionate versus something like enanthate or cypionate. Guys were taking it 2 times per week when it was a cypionate or enanthate. We know now that injection frequency, so you don't have these spikes and dips in your testosterone levels, will lead to more stable aromatization and conversion to DHT. So I can understand the reason for using propionate if you need to pull it out quickly, but it's more likely that the injection frequency had more to do with the aromatization more so than the ester.
just like 300 milligrams a week.
Yeah.
Just to keep a base level of testosterone in there, and the rest would be a Prima Bolan.
All right, so I am shocked that he was only running 300 milligrams a test, but that's probably all he could run to keep the aromatization under control on contest prep, and he starts to mention Prima Bolan here. I called that one.
Parabolin, which was the Trenbolone we had at that point.
Parabolin, I don't remember the doses on it. It was something like 76 point something per milliliter. Parabolin has a very long ester for the trend. So I think the actual, after you factor out the weight of the ester, it's something like 55 or 60 milligrams of actual compound that's there. So Parabolin is what they used back then. It's funny how many of the old bodybuilders if you hear them talk, didn't even realize that Parabolin was tren. At least he seems to know that it was tren. Dorian seems to be one of the smarter guys that was in the sport at that time. I heard some other one. I'm trying to remember who it was. There was another bodybuilder. I think it was Jay Cutler, actually, that didn't seem to understand that Parabolin was tren. Maybe not. I apologize to Jay if I'm incorrect about that.
And,
the good stuff.
Legendary, man. Legendary. Just the blue and white box, just to look at it. I mean, you don't get it anymore. It was made by a company called Negma in France.
Yeah.
But Trenbolone is very powerful, and we knew that, although we didn't have many books or anything, like just word of mouth. I remember it came end of the 80s, maybe, and it was the new thing. It was the new thing, but it was like, wow, this is very powerful. That's why it comes in such a low dose, 76 milligrams. Not
All right, yeah, so I think it was I think it was like 76 point something, but yeah, he's correct. So it was a really weird dose. I think they factored it out. If I remember right, what Kurt was telling me, I think they factored it out that way so it would work out to be actually 50 milligrams of active compound that you get after the weight of the ester. I believe that's why they came up with such the weird number. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I recall.
Not 75, 76, yeah? So people were doing 2, maximum 3 of those a week.
So listen to that, 2, maximum 3 a week. So effectively, if you want to compare it to Tren Ace, they were taking about 150 milligrams of Tren Ace per week, which is what I heard back then. That was considered a high dose, not this 700,000 milligrams crazy stuff that you hear people running now. I am currently running 20 milligrams of Tren per day for my contest prep. It's plenty. Even at 20 milligrams, so it works out to be 140 a week, very similar to what he was taking. Even still, I get the thermogenic effect. It affects my sleep. It makes me feel a little edgy. But for me, that's plenty. I've pushed higher before. I'm not going to lie to you. I've gone up to as high as 700 milligrams of Tren a week, which made me feel absolutely horrific. I felt sick. I had a fever. I couldn't function. I couldn't sleep. So that seems realistic to me. Let's see what he has to say about other stuff, if he actually talks about doses or not. A lot of these guys are very, very vague about doses. All right, Gym Bros, I'm going to interrupt this regularly scheduled broadcast to tell you about the new Science of HGH ebook by Kurt Havens. It is available on the Anabolic Bodybuilding website for download right now. There is a link in the video description below for the ebook if you want to pick it up. It is probably the most comprehensive ebook about performance enhancement use with HGH, over 100 pages of information with references, and it's awesome. Go check it out.
Now I hear people doing 800 milligrams of Tren or something. No wonder they're getting mental problems or whatever it is. Trenbolone is very, very androgenic and very powerful. You shouldn't use a lot of it. You don't need a lot of it to get the benefits. So propionate as a base of testosterone, which I dropped out the last week. Prima Bolan.
Yeah, guys would drop the prop just to clear it out of their system, to pull any water out. I don't know how much of a difference it would make dropping it on the last week, but it may dry you out a little bit.
Which does not aromatize. It's kind of mild. And Anavar.
That sounds fairly similar to my contest prep cycle. My contest prep, except I'm running more testosterone because I can leverage an aromatase inhibitor, but I'm running test. Prima Bolan, I do add Masteron to it. I really didn't hear of people running Masteron back there. I'm sure there were guys that were. I could never find Masteron. The first time I ever really had access to it was in the last 12 years or so. I know it was around, but it was really hard to find. It was kind of an oddball thing, and I don't think people really used it. It was considered to be weak. Now everybody loves Masteron. Seems to be the hot drug of the moment right now. Everybody wants to run Masteron as their secondary compound. So test, Primo, Anavar. I'm sure he was running GH. And I don't know if he's going to talk about GH or not, but I'm sure he was running GH and Tren. Sounds like a solid contest prep cycle to me.
Yeah, that was a base and a growth hormone, of course.
And what would you find was the most harsh, like the strongest, and it would have the most sides?
I didn't really get side effects on a contest prep. I would say if you put the Trenbolone up too high, then that could be problematic.
Yeah.
Anavar is fairly mild, Prima Bolan is fairly mild, and testosterone in moderate doses is okay. I'd say the only steroid I didn't really feel good on was Anapolon. or Anadrol.
There you go. Anadrol made him feel like crap. Anadrol makes everybody feel like crap. But man, is Anadrol awesome. It'll make you strong as fuck. I steer people away from Anadrol for bodybuilding. I don't know that it really serves a purpose in bodybuilding. Maybe for peaking for shows, I've heard of guys running it the last day or two going into a show to fill out. I would be worried about having water retention and spillover. I think it's more of a powerlifting drug. It's good for strength and CNS motivation. For bodybuilding, we want to eat. We want to grow in the off season. Anadrol really wrecks your stomach, makes you feel sick. And if you're feeling sick and if your stomach's upset, you can't eat, you can't train hard, you're not going to grow. And I think Dorian probably figured that out 30 years ago.
OxyMetholone 50s.
Yeah.
But apparently it's quite poorly received by the receptors. That's why it's made in such a high dose, 50 milligrams, where most orals would be. I mean, Anavar used to come in 2.5 in those days, yeah, and Dynabol 5 milligrams. So OxyMetholone or Anapolon 50s, I mean, yeah, you'll get a big boost in size and strength very rapidly, but it's a lot of water retention as well, and you lose it equally as quick after.
Yeah, and he's right about that. I call it the fake water weight gains. It's the same thing with D-ball. Everybody thinks they got big on D-ball, and then they lose their size when they come off. It's just water. It's not real tissue. And the strength that you gain from Anadrol generally is not from additional tissue. It's just CNS motivation. Your CNS is in overdrive. You're getting more neuro push, or whatever you want to call it. I'm probably slaughtering that for strength
afterwards, and it's harsh on your system. So, yeah, not my favorite. But my side effects from steroids were just the usual ones. I was quite prone to getting acne in the off season with the high androgens, testosterone and stuff. My blood pressure was too high when my body.
I mean, at least he was aware of his blood pressure. I didn't think anybody was monitoring blood pressure back then. Nobody gave a fuck, really. People weren't really checking blood work. They weren't using an aromatase inhibitor, so they were probably bloated as fuck. They probably weren't running blood pressure meds. And running things like D-ball that are going to make you even more bloated and have water retention and cause blood pressure to go up.
My body weight was up around there, and probably now I would have been advised to take, and it probably would have been a good idea to take something to lower that blood pressure.
Yeah.
But it wasn't suggested to me, and I didn't really know. And
see, there he touches on it. They didn't know about taking blood pressure medicines for mitigating some of the side effects from heavy androgen use. ARBs are very popular right now, more specifically telmisartan. You can also use an ACE inhibitor. Something like lisinopril is another option. It's uncomfortable talking to your doctor about it, but managing your blood pressure is probably the single most important thing to do to mitigate poor health outcomes from taking PEDs. Most bodybuilders, when you take a step back and analyze it, when they pass away, it is from cardiovascular events and kidney disease. Typically, it's heart enlargement, blocked arteries, aneurysms, strokes, clots, things like that. And then kidney disease is just from chronic elevated blood pressure usually. And most of the stuff starts with high blood pressure and controlling your lipids. But primarily, the first line of defense would be making sure that your blood pressure is kept in line.
I had a doctor, he was my doctor when I don't know why, but I kept contact with him because he was my doctor when I was living on Castle Vale, the council estate.
Yeah.
And after I was on the World Games and he saw me on TV, he was like, well, because I said, look, I'm taking steroids. I'd like you to just monitor me. So he did very basic tests. And he's like, your blood pressure's too high and this and that. It's not good in the long term.
Yeah, doctors now are not very aware of the effects of steroids and how to treat them and how to manage health with PED users. I'm sure it was even worse back then. They had no clue. Usually the answer is don't take them when you go to the doctor, and nobody that's a bodybuilder is going to stop taking them. So it's not an answer any of us want to hear.
But I understand you're making money, so make as much as you can and get out.
Not a good tactic.
That was his, view on it. So, the potential side effects are there, and you've got to manage that. And now there's much more information out there, much more access to testing and things like that.
He is correct. It's just been in the last 10 to 12 years that people have become more health conscious. Really, the first person I heard talk about this stuff and managing these things was Dante Trudel, probably 2004, 2005. He was sort of the ahead of the curve about talking about blood pressure, kidneys, things like that. I never really heard anybody talk about that until him. And then there's been other people that have followed in his footsteps. You have John Jewett now. Some of these people that, talk about safer use models.
So definitely if you're using it, you should be responsible and at least know what's going on. I think a lot of people don't want to know because they're kind of like head in the sand. They're like, well, if there's something bad going on, then I have to confront. I have to make...
That's the bodybuilder way. Just ignore your health problems. Don't worry about it now. Fuck it. Deal with it later.
Make a decision or rather just...
not know. Yeah. And did you get your bloods taken and everything?
Yeah, like quarterly. And only thing with my bloods is...
I'm surprised that he even had blood work done. Nobody back then was doing blood work. Not very few people anyway. I'm sure there were some that were, but most of the guys I talked to paid zero attention to any of that shit.
Sometimes my liver enzymes were a little bit high, but nothing too concerning. And
as we know, the elevated liver enzymes, the lifting weights hard will cause what doctors will freak out and think that you're in liver failure or having some stress. It's literally just the waste product from tearing up your muscles in the gym. And we know that now, and running ALT and AST are not really the best indicator of liver health when it comes for bodybuilding. Probably GGT would be a better one. Actually having a liver ultrasound done to see if there's any damage, sclerosis, or fatty liver problems going on.
And some kidney readings were too high because of my muscle mass.
Yeah.
That will also happen too. Creatinine will be elevated. I'm sure they were taking creatine, which can also falsely elevate it. And just being bigger, your creatinine is going to be higher. BUN, blood urea nitrogen, is going to be high from a high protein diet. That's not necessarily indicative of kidney disease. We know that now. There are better tests, cystatin C, getting a kidney ultrasound done, and if those indicate there's problems, then you can have a 24-hour clearance test done. But the traditional EGFR readings on blood work is pretty piss poor for bodybuilders. They're pretty much useless.
Some readings will go high, like one of the creatinines.
Yeah, creatinine or something.
That will go crazy high. I had people calling me from the labs one time, like, "Sir, are you okay? Do you feel okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Because the creatinine level is like, yeah, but do you realize that this goes up with muscle mass? Because even the parameters for Caucasian and African American is different because African Americans naturally carry more muscle. The parameters are different. And I said, I'm carrying a lot more muscle mass than the average person, believe me. I was like, oh, okay, then they got it. So, but yeah, you need to be informed.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't really talk about doses that much. I heard another interview where he talked about the doses that he would run. He said that the most he ever pushed, and he was sort of cryptic about it. He said the most that he ever pushed was 2,500, and it sounded like test, and he said it made him feel sick. Who knows? If I were to speculate on a contest prep cycle, back then those guys were running the 100 milliliter amps of Prima Bolan. He talks about his testosterone. I imagine he probably started off the off-season with his off-season dose with his test higher with the Prima Bolan in there, and then probably lowered the testosterone as he got deeper into his contest prep cycle and pushed his Prima Bolan doses up. So if you were taking 1 amp per day, that would be 700 milligrams of Prima Bolan per week. If you were taking 2 amps per day, that would be 1,400 per week. I don't know, who knows with the Anavar 50, 100 milligrams, who knows what he was actually taking. I thought I'd heard another interview where he said that he was, or maybe I saw it online somewhere, that he was also using halotestin at the end of contest prep. I could be wrong about that. I have heard him talk about his HGH doses before. I think they were somewhere like in the 8 or 9 unit range, I believe. But HGH was extremely expensive and hard to source back then. I'm sure he was probably given whatever he needed. But who knows what he was taking. I can't imagine, with as big as he was, that his total load on contest prep was below 2 grams. I would have a hard time believing that it was below 2 grams. Possibly. I mean, anything's possible, but I would not think that it was below 2 grams. But you have to think about how things were dosed back then. The Anavar that people got back then, if I recall correctly, they were 5 milligrams. So, but I've heard stories of guys just grabbing a handful of them or dumping a whole bottle on their hand and choking them down with their water pre-workout. So I don't know. My guess would be that, he had mentioned the 2.5 gram number on another interview. I think it was actually the longer form of this interview. So my guess would be is that he was probably in that 2.5 gram range, maybe more. Only he knows, and hopefully one day he'll share exactly what he was doing. He did talk about the testosterone dose, but you will notice that he did not mention the Prima Bolan dose, which, if you're going to read between the lines, tells me that it was probably a lot. And he did talk about the trend dose, the Parabolin dose. He said 2, maybe 3 a week. So he was running 2, 3. He had to have been running 3 ampules a week. So we know what that was. It's the 76.5 or whatever it was. So 225 milligrams of tren a week, plus the Prima Bolan. I would say, what do you say, 350 or something like that on the test at the end. It was probably higher at the beginning. Whatever he was rolling in the off season, 1.5 grams, 2 grams a test, he probably just rolled that right into the contest prep cycle, and then just lowered it as he got closer. That would be a line up with taking the propionate, so you could quickly adjust doses. It sounded like to me that low dose testosterone was as he got deeper into his contest prep. So, like I said, he probably ratcheted up the Prima Bolan, added in the tren, added in the Anavar, lowered the test dose as he went along. Maybe there was halotestin in there. I heard in another interview or somewhere I saw mentioned, I think it was on maybe a message board or something somewhere, that he used halo. Who knows? Maybe he didn't. And then, that's probably what he did. In the off season, I know he's openly talked about that before. I think he liked Test, Deca, Primo, D-Ball. Those were his off season compounds. And once again, he did in this long form video mention 2.5 grams. That was a number that he mentioned. All right, folks, I'm just speculating here. I have no idea what he actually took, but we can sort of read between the lines. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Give me your thoughts on what he took, how much you think it was, whether he's full of crap or if he's telling the truth here. And I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for watching my channel. If you want to support me, please support my sponsor, First Detachment Nutrition, quality supplements formulated by the man himself, Justin Harris. Use the discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. Link to their supplements is in the video description below. Thank you for watching. For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.